strong statement here. One that I have backed up with 10 years of study, research into the effects of early life trauma and how it affects brain development, as well as an ability to see through the bullshit of my own culture, unfortunately, to see through the absolute irrationality, the inconsistencies, the lies, the insecurities, the cowardice, just the lack of consistency of relative levels of trauma and damage that is being done to children. And I'm going to use, and I'm sorry to do this, I love this guy, okay, JD DeLay. I mean, the guy's got, he's an awesome speaker. He's articulate. He's educational. He's interesting. Pretty much all the views that I've ever heard him say, I pretty much totally agree with in a lot of ways. And I think he tends to be very fair. He has a lot of experience that I think gives him, the kind of like, I don't know, would make people want to listen to him, would make you want to follow him, would make children maybe take him as a mentor. I mean, I have nothing but very positive things to say about JD, except for one very different thing, and I really can't even attach this to him yet, but I have approached him on his channel. I have requested that he, debate me or talk to me about the actual worst crime being done to our children in the United States of America en masse, happening every day to 3,500 babies every single day, that literally creates the damage that leads to monsters that hurt more children and create more trauma, creating what you would consider a positive feedback loop. And a positive feedback loop is when you create trauma, and nobody's going to deny common sense, rational psychology we all understand, such as we understand the cycles of trauma. We may not understand it in ourselves in our lives. I do, because I see it like in 90% of the people that I interact with or that I'm surrounded with. Probably a higher percentage of that. So we like to pretend that we're not like this because nobody wants to admit to recreating cycles of trauma. But the fact is that cycles do perpetuate very, very strongly. And abused children become abusers in the future. And the more abuse that happens, the more continuation of this abuse occurs. And the reason why this happens is because this abuse and pain and torture literally creates morphological structural changes in key areas of the brain. I can actually list these out for you and give you a kind of an overview, but one of the ones that I like to talk about is the amygdala, which is the body's alert mechanism, the fight or flight mechanism that alerts you to danger. It's like if you see a big cat, the amygdala fires. What ends up happening is a cascading of events that activates the fight or flight nervous system, also known as the parasympathetic nervous system. And what happens is the amygdala fires. The frontal lobe, okay, if you got to think about this, the frontal lobe will shut down. And you're like, well, why would that happen? The frontal lobe is where your conscious is occurring. When you're parsing what I'm telling you right now, when you're making your own thoughts in your head while listening to this conversation, that is your conscious awareness. I'm talking to your consciousness right now. That's your conscious awareness. That is your ability to logically and think, critical, and also a lot of other things. But there's a deeper emotional side to you. And so most of us, we want to say, we would never harm children or do harmful things to children. But yet we do. We do. And we live in a certain extreme denial. Again, a psychological trait we've all heard of and all, not in denial of, right? We're not in denial of denial. We're not in denial of early life trauma that affects children. Well, a lot of people are, I guess. There's still some coming around to that. But the modern psychology is not even close to denying that. In fact, Gabor Mate is one of the world's premier child psychologists. I had a video about Gabor Mate. I'm calling out both him and Jordan Peterson, who I think have absolutely no excuse to not approach this issue. But JD, I do really hope you do approach this issue. Man, I have so much respect for you. Just as a person, as a human being, as a man, as a force of nature, as a you know, as a man with wisdom. And I've watched your videos for a while. I enjoy it. I'm entertained by you. I learn from you. I respect you. But there is this one issue, and this is the same issue I have with anybody in my culture. Anybody within the United States of America, the world's only, take this into account, the world's only child genital mutilation culture that does it for pseudoscience medical excuses. That literally doesn't do it for any religion. But, you know, I mean, imagine being enculturated into a 3,000-year-old religion and being born and raised in, you know, in churches and synagogues and all these other things for their entire life. Yeah, that's a try. I mean, I was involved in the Christian religion myself growing up. But like I said, I have an ability to see through some bullshit. Well, one of the biggest bullshits in America, Tosh 2.0 has talked with Brother K about this. What's the guy? I forgot the other guy's name. Adam versus the Man also did another report on this. Joe Rogan's talked about this. Only very few people are able to see through the BS, the bullshit, the bullshito. This is the ultimate bullshito martial arts in America. The absolute denial of the most extreme, horrific violation of our children that you could possibly imagine. I mean, let me draw your attention to the level of disparity and just absolute outrage that this is. When we talk about people taking hands and running them across tissue of the child in a certain area, we call them very distinct words, and we have a very hateful attack approach to them in our society, and rightfully so, right? Of course. You know, anybody that does weird things for their own gratification to a child that can alter and harm the development of that child for life and affect their confidence, their sexuality, their future love and relationships. I mean, literally can just, I mean, damage a child's brain for life, right? I mean, it's harmful. But it is nothing. I mean, it's like, it's a grain of sand compared to the sun or the largest black hole in the universe. To compare that to circumcision. Okay, a circumcision, you're taking pliers and knives and you're ripping apart the structures. Very important structural, functioning structures. The most pleasurable part of a man's body, the most nerve-dense, sensitive tissue, the most excruciating pain you could possibly imagine. You know, this is like slamming your fingers in a car door and having them crushed to the bone. That's the level of extreme excruciation. Having your fingers cut off. You know, I mean, literal torture. This is literal torture. And 55% of those children still today receive no anesthesia. And for the last 3,000 years, you know how many men received anesthesia for this procedure? Like probably 0.00001%. And the fact that even if they do the most effective anesthesia, the dorsal nerve block, which only 30% of anesthesia people get, or children get, the dorsal nerve block is only 40-50% effective because it doesn't block the pudendal nerve, which innervates the frenulum and the ridge band, the underside, which has the main sensory nerves, including the misericordial corpuscles, the most sensitive nervings in the body, found in the abundance in the lips and the fingertips. That's why the lips and the fingertips are sensitive. That's why it would be extremely, excruciatingly painful for somebody to cut off your lips, or to cut off the skin of your fingers, or to slam your finger in a car door. These are, I mean, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, duh, get to the point. Right? The point is that I have to get to this level to make the point. That's the point. That all these men are so utterly in denial, so incapable of responding to this massive trauma and abuse that's being perpetuated against the most helpless in our society without waver, without fail, without even a question, without even without any type of interference whatsoever. In fact, the victims become the perpetrators. The victims become the most ardent supporters of their own abuse because they cannot fathom the fact that their little guy down below is nothing compared to what he would have been had you been born in a better place and a better time where people respected you as a baby and as a child. Okay? And JD is a felon. And this, I'm not using this to shame him. Obviously, a man who has went down some bad path and has come around to, like, you know, wow, being this type of amazing person. I mean, go sign up on his channel. You'll love him too. Most people, I think, really do appreciate him. But yet, you know, I have asked him on his channel. I have asked him repeatedly a number of times to talk about this. But, you know, it's like nobody has the strength, the ability to bypass this extreme level of brain trauma and damage. And I was going to get into the amygdala. Let me finish what I was going to say about the amygdala. And I'm sorry I'm bouncing around a little bit. But the amygdala is a fight or flight system, like I was saying. When you have a fight or flight situation, you have brain structures, right? You only have so much ability to focus, right? You have probably, like, you know, I think the term is you have 2 billion bits of information happening in your brain at any one time. You're aware of about 2,000 of them. It's a very small percentage of the number of bits of information that you are actually aware of. So all this is happening in the background. Well, you also have two parts of your brain, or different areas. You have the amygdala. You probably remember Waterboy, what's wrong with your medulla oblongata. So you have the medulla oblongata, you have the brainstem, you have the pons. These are the reptilian areas of the brain. They even call it the reptilian brain. And the reason why they do that is because almost all you know, mammals or animals, even reptiles, have this fundamental, very primitive area of the brain structure, and it is based off of survival. It is designed to get you the heck out of Dodge, to fight or flight. Now, let me think this through. Are you going to be doing quadratic equations when you're in a fight or flight? Do you need to have well, most of the time, are you gonna need to have, you know, thoughtful social conversations with a person, and have to discover ways of combining and uniting with each other so that you can move past these differences and reach an agreement together? Or is it a tiger's chasing you, right? And your heart rate's breathing, and your brain will shut down your frontal lobe, right? And you have this thing called the amygdala hijack. And the amygdala hijack, okay, is when the amygdala literally shuts down your frontal lobe. Now, this is what happens when you get some guy who had trauma as a child, and I'll explain that in a second, how this really caused that amygdala to super fire off. He has this trauma as a child, and then as an adult, he has something happen to him. And maybe he dealt with his trauma as an adult, and he's a functioning person, and he's a good person, and, you know, he's moved past this, and he's got these wonderful things, and everybody respects him and loves him and appreciates him. He's a good person, right? And then one day he snaps and he does something everybody's shocked about. Nobody can understand. What? The neighbor? Bob? No, not Bob. No, no way. Bob couldn't do that. Man, I'm so against that. I can't believe Bob did that. What a piece of... Okay? And then you're judging Bob. What happened is Bob had an amygdala hijack. This is a real thing. You lose your frontal lobe, you go into that fight or flight nervous system, and you respond with fight or flight reactions. And that may be fighting for your life from a saber-toothed tiger. And who knows who's in front of you, and that may not really be a saber-toothed tiger this time. It may be someone that you love and you care about. Okay, and I'm not saying this is an excuse. There's no excuse for that type of behavior. There's even no excuse. But this is a fact of human psychology, and we must approach it. We must acknowledge it. Okay? Because if you don't stop trauma now, it's going to be perpetuated in the future. This is a positive feedback loop. I've already explained this. Early life trauma, adverse childhood experiences. Look up Gabby Mater. Mate. M-A-T-E. I think with the apostrophe over the E. Gabby Mate. And listen to him talk. Listen to him talk about how trauma sets up people for addiction, for future issues in their life. We are living in a child trauma society where we literally traumatize the male of the species. Okay? the stronger part of the species, the part with the testosterone, with the aggression. And we create altered amygdalas, larger, stronger, more reactive amygdalas in the brain of these men. And then we wonder why we have the largest prison population in the world. We wonder why we have school shooters and serial killers. We have an abundance of serial killers unknown in most parts of the world. Okay? Now, I'm not saying this is the only trauma that happens to children. I mean, you look at the drug trade in Mexico and the trauma that's happening over there that creates future men that become easy to manipulate cartel members. Just like the U.S. has easy to manipulate shoulders to go kill and die for oil profits of the rich and the elite in the United States of America. Just like America's got a whole bunch of men with toxic masculinity who think they got to be tough and prove themselves over and over and over again, who get into fights and go to jail and go to prison and have to prove themselves in prison and be the tough guy. Be the tough guy. I'm the guy that fights. I'm the guy. I'm the aggressive me. I'm the macho man. But you know what? You know what the real man is? The real man is a balance. The real man is in control of himself. The real man uses intelligence and his wit, and he overcomes the lion, the most powerful beast in nature, in the world. He overcomes the whale. We pick whales out of the ocean. Little tiny humans with our intelligence, with that frontal lobe, not with that reptilian brain, with the frontal lobe. There is no pride in being a reptilian brain psychopath who can't control himself. There's no pride in that. Who cares if you could beat everybody up? That doesn't make you a good person. That doesn't make you valid and intelligent and emotionally intelligent and able to provide for those you love and the people that in your lives that matter to you, and to be a good person and to leave this world a better place than you found it. We are living in a trauma-damaged culture. Everything that is going on around us is influenced by this. Whether it's the USA going over to Mexico and South America and using them to fund Iran-Contras and wars across the world, and creating insurrections and coups and overthrowing democratically elected leaders and destroying people's potential to grow and get out of poverty, and creating child trauma. So the nation of child trauma goes over and it creates child trauma in additional areas. Remember, it's a positive feedback loop. What do you think is going to happen to Europe with a lot of men that have trauma damage being pushed into their society? What is happening to Europe? What did happen to Europe? What happened in Cologne? I mean, I don't need to mention all these things. I'm not trying to be racist towards any group or people or religion. Remember, this is a fact of human psychology. This creates trauma-damaged children. So, let's get back to this image here. Now, we all know about Ashton Kutcher, P. Diddy, and all that stuff that's going on right now, right? We all know that stuff. You know, I mean, when Ashton Kutcher was in Congress talking about, child trafficking, I was like, wow, what an amazing guy. First off, he's tall, handsome, good looking, all these attributes. He's a star. He's, in movies, he's witty, funny, hilarious. I mean, imagine hanging out with him. He'd just be a fun person to hang out with, you'd think, right? You'd think. And now he's connected with P. Diddy and all these other things. And maybe he is still that good person, but, you just kind of like, you wonder, you're just like, wow, right? You just wonder, right? You wonder about these things. And you wonder how these things perpetuate and how they come to pass and how they come to be. And like I said, I'm going to make a bold claim in this video. And I'm telling you right now that early life trauma creates those people that hurt little children. And in specific, when you attack a very specific organ and you remove the main sensory functioning tissue of that organ and you reduce the potential ability of that organ to produce what would be the pleasurable experience of that person. And you reduce the satisfaction of that person. And you never tell them that you don't know this. You know, maybe nobody has outer ears, and you live in a society where nobody has outer ears. You wonder why nobody can hear each other, and everybody has to write things down. You wonder that, but you never question it because you never had your ears. You never heard the voice. You've never heard the music with your outer ear funneling that sound in a controlled fashion directly into your inner ear so that you can hear that wonderful music loud and clear. You've never heard it before. So how are you going to know? How are you going to know you're not fulfilled? How do you know you're not that guy in Europe, that man, just that great experience that his woman had? He just had the same level of experience. And I, as a man, American man with my deficiencies, know that I have never in my life had anywhere close to what I see in when I saw my female partners. What I have seen there's a whole nother level to this shit for them. I'm like, wow, damn. I wish I could get to that level of experience. But you know what? The European men do. I'm basically a woman missing the most pleasurable part of her body. And so if I've never had it, how would I know? Of course, I'm a man, but I'm using that as an analogy because FGM, you get it, right? You don't want to be so shocked. No one would be so shocked, and there wouldn't be no scientific studies by, you know, weirdos who have certain fetishes and extreme fetishes and are connected with people who also have other desires for young children, and they get published on PubMed with ridiculous math-denying, logic-exploding arguments that claim that removing the most pleasurable half, including about the 75% of the most pleasurable parts, including the two most sensitive parts, doesn't reduce sensation. All right, I'm ranting here, but let's get back to this part that I'm about to rant about now. And I'm sorry I'm taking you on this trip and this tour because we're going to get back to JD in this video because my man JD, like I said, he has this video. And Tim Tebow, now he's pulling an Ashton Kutcher. He's up there. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, Ashton, go. You go, Tim. You go. You protect those children. You speak out for the children, Tim. Tim Tebow. But did you know that Tim Tebow has articles of him going over to the Philippines where they're also another genital cutting culture? And not surprisingly, they also have a lot of martial artists. And they have a lot of violence. Americans have a lot of violence and a lot of things. Muslims and they have a lot of, you know, I mean, look at the UFC. You got the outliers is the Brazilians. They're just badasses, just not because they're Brazilian. But, you know, because the Brazilians don't do this crazy stuff to their children. Although the U.S. is trying to import it to Brazil, and I've met Brazilian people who have warned me that this is being perpetuated over there as well. But anyways, so Tim, my man, Timmy. You're not physically crippled, but mentally, bro. Mentally, let's talk about that. How in the world can you be talking about not hurting children when you literally helped doctors cut into the genital tissue of screaming, abused children? Tim, literally altering their brain development, creating a highly reactive amygdala and a exaggerated trauma response that can lead to amygdala hijack, future traumas, future injuries, perpetuations of traumas, cycles of traumas, further denial of the trauma. And so I ask you, JD DeLay, do you have the strength that your arms have and that your wisdom has shown to question the real abuse in our culture, the real issue, the real damage, the ground zero of trauma in America? Ground zero happens day one in American hospitals, daily, every single day, on purpose, without any strong men with these strong arms and these cool tattoos and his nice beard and his tough guy. You know, I bet you he'd be a tough one to tussle with, this JD character. But JD, you have heart, you have mind, you have strength of character, and you have wisdom that you are teaching the youth. It's time to step up to the real plate. Take the red pill. The real red pill. You know what the red pill really means? The red pill is that pill you don't want to take. It's the one that hurts you. The one that calls you into question. That calls your actions, your beliefs, your opinions, your opinions that you had downloaded without your conscious awareness as a child growing up in a cutting culture. You had no idea this was being downloaded into your brain, and it is, and it's there. And the denial is real, and the damage is real. How about we stop creating more pedophiles, JD? How about we stop creating more serial killers, more school shooters? Okay? Let's listen to Tim, the mutilator Tebow, Trump himself, pun intended. And you know what he's doing with this area, in this area of his life, I totally support. But you cannot be a hypocrite. You cannot hurt children in very specific area of their body, which is a sexual area that they're going to have in the future. That's their body, not ours. And you help hurt these children. You hurt these children. You helped hurt children. And JD, the silence is violence. The silence is violence. When we are scared and coward in the face of harm and bad and evil, we become responsible for what we do. When we are in denial, despite the fact that we have the trauma damage to our brain, at some level, you have to take some responsibility. You know, at some level, you have to become a man. You have to step up to the plate. You have to swallow the pride. You have to take the red pill. If you really want to be that person you think you are. If you want to be that person you put yourself up to be.
What the others were into.
This is...
Next man...
I'm sorry. I have to say... This is such a bad statement. I'm not going to include it just because it just goes into something different than what I'm actually talking about. My point here is that this leads into that type of behavior, and this perpetuates that behavior, and this is related to that behavior. People don't have extreme compulsions to give their children aspirin if their children don't need aspirin. People don't have irrational desires to give their children a cast on an unbroken arm, right? Of course, yeah, the cast is good, the broken arm. Yeah, let's give the cast. But there's no broken arm. Why are you giving the cast? Right? But they want to do it. Why do they want to do it? Where's the compulsion? Where is that from? So this is interrelated with that. And you guys all know what I'm saying. And this is one of the most important points I think you can make in this world, is that when you hurt children in humanity, in our future, our collective future, when you hurt children, they hurt more children. They hurt the world. What you do to children, they do to society. And the measure of the health of a society is directly related to how it treats children. That's Nelson Mandela. All right, I'm going to leave you guys, but thank you for listening. I know I'm kind of ranting on this one. I always rant. It's always going to be a rant. I'm an emotional person. I'm angry. I don't mince words. I don't cower away from the hard conversations, because this is the hard conversation. Everybody already gets the other abuses. that are happening. Everybody's up on that. We get that. We get that massaging is bad. Let's take the next step, or actually maybe the previous step, because if massaging is bad, then cutting and clamping with knives is really bad, right? Really bad, right? Because the pain is far greater than a massage, and the permanent damage is for life. There's no permanent damage with the massage, no matter how sick and twisted and disgusting it is to us who have rational human brains. So is this. So is this. So, JD, balls in your court, brother. I hope you step up to the plate. I love you, man. Man, come on, bro. You can do this, man. Look up Elliot Hughes. Elliot Hughes, I went after Elliot Hughes. Elliot Hughes has like 2.3 billion followers. He had a YouTube channel called The Strength Camp. He was having a men's retreat, a men's empowerment group. And, you know, hey, you know what? This is the most empowering men's thing you could possibly do, is break the taboo that harms men as the most helpless that we can possibly be as infants and babies and children. Like, anyways, said enough. Peace out.